The road to a dream can be a thorny one. So thought teenagers Seydu and Musa, who had endured hardship since childhood and aspired to start a new life by escaping to Europe. Who would have thought that it would not only be difficult, it would be a real hell that not everyone can survive? Dakar, Senegal. Woken up by the singing of his many sisters in a poor shack, teenager Seydu wakes up his cousin from the neighboring apartment, and together the teenagers go to work without even having breakfast. Seydu doesn't tell his mother the truth. He assures her that they are only going to play soccer. Seydu and Musa are going to go to Europe, dreaming that there they can become famous singers and get rich. In the evening, the teenagers have to return. Seydu's mother and her daughters dance in a park for tourists, and the boys are assigned to play drums. After the concert, Seydu decides to talk to his mother and inform her that he plans to go to earn money. Only the guy does not meet with understanding. On the contrary, the woman arranges a scandal, forbidding her son to even think about it. In the morning, Moose also flies in. Knowing that her son is very driven, the woman warns her nephew not to put nonsense into Seydu's head. The trip they are planning is too dangerous. When the boys leave, the woman looks after them, as if she has a premonition that the conversation won't help. And it does. As soon as the brothers disappear around the corner, Musa starts hitting on his buddy, reminding him that they spent 6 months preparing to escape, and now they can't give up just because of guilt. The next days are spent in preparation for the escape. During the day, the guys study. In the evening, they continue to work at a sawmill or as loaders, and at night, they use the only smartphone to flip through music videos, dreaming of how soon they will become popular and rich. For the sake of this, the teenagers are also constantly trying to write songs, using their mother's words that she has been looking for her son for a long time and was very worried. Seydu and Musa compose another hit, which they present to their friends. Finally, the decisive days come, when the last formal matters remain to be resolved before running away. Coming to a bustling market, the teens find a local watchmaker who can advise them on crossing the desert and tell them about all the intricacies of crossing the border. To the teens' surprise, the man is not happy about the young people's arrival, and he tries to dissuade them in every possible way. He assures them that the crossing is something scary. According to him, most people die on the way, unable to bear the strain, heat, or thirst. Many fall victim to robbers and migrant hunters. But even those who are lucky enough to survive the crossing are not always happy. No one is waiting for them in Europe, and many are then forced to wander, starve, and sleep on the streets. The instructor chases the teenagers away, and Seydu confesses to his brother that he is beginning to have doubts. He doesn't want to leave his mother and sisters and put himself at such risk. But Musa does not calm down. He convinces his brother that there is no turning back, unless he wants to be known as a coward and a weakling. Musa reminds him again how they will become rich and famous. He assures them that after only a few months, they will be able to sign autographs for white people, and the whole world will be at their feet, and their mother and sisters will finally live well. They will send them money to live and to build a new house. Seydu agrees with his brother's arguments, but before leaving, he insists on meeting the local shaman. The boys come to the old man, and having told him about their plan, they become participants of a strange ritual. The shaman sprinkles them with ashes and pours water on them, saying various incantations under his nose. Having finished the first part, the old man instructs the teenagers to go to the cemetery and ask their ancestors for permission to leave. According to the sorcerer, only the spirits of the past will be able to protect the fugitives and predict what awaits them on their way to a better life. Despite the strangeness of this order, the teenagers go to the cemetery and appeal to the spirits of the ancestors, asking them for permission to move and protection. Seydu also doesn't miss the opportunity to ask forgiveness for deceiving their mothers, and he appeals to the spirits to protect the women from mental anguish. 3 days later, the boys return to the shaman, who gives them a message from the ancestral spirits. The old man says that the spirits have blessed them, and they can go. Seydu spends the last evening at home looking longingly at his sisters and his mother. As soon as everyone falls asleep, the boy quietly puts the basic things in his backpack and explains to his waking sister that he will have to leave for a while. The teenager decides not to mention that the journey will be very dangerous and long. Seydu and Musa take a bus to the border, lost in the crowd of immigrants like them. On the way, the guys continue writing their songs, dreaming about how well they will live in rich Europe when they reach their destination. After reaching a small parking lot somewhere on the outskirts of the country, Musa learns that here they can get new documents. It's not cheap, but they have no other option. The guys go to the white wall to take a passport photo, after which they enter a dark room to get the document. Seydu tries to haggle a bit, but the experienced salesman won't even listen. He won't give up a cent of the agreed price, warning that the deal might fall through. Having received their passports, by which they are no longer Senegalese but Malians, the guys get on the next bus and continue their journey. The bus stops at the border with Malta and the border guards enter the cabin to check their documents. Seydu and Musa calmly hold out their new passports, assuring the uniformed officer that the documents were obtained 2 years ago in this country. The border guard turns out to be not stupid, noticing that the guys now and the guys from the photo are wearing the same clothes. He proves that the fugitives are trying to lie to him. But $50 solves this issue. Having received the money, the border guards let the infiltrators go as if it were something quite insignificant. Having reached another transit point somewhere on the outskirts of Malta, the guys are faced with a huge number of guides. Among them, they choose one. For $800, the man offers the teenagers comfortable conditions in a brand new car, on which they can get to Libyan Tripoli. And from there, just a little bit and Italy. The boys agree to the tempting advertisement, and by evening they are brought to the accommodation camp for tourists, those who will travel further along the same route. Looking around, the teenagers see dozens of people, including old men, women, and children. Only now do Seydu and Musa begin to realize how serious an undertaking they are undertaking. But it is too late to turn back. Almost all the money they have earned has already been spent, and they have to go all the way. In the evening, the women in the camp prepare a small snack, and a crowd of fugitives sit around the campfire to get acquainted and talk a bit. Among the inexperienced newcomers, there is a man who is not the first time to overcome this path, and listening to him, the teenagers learn that the rest of the money must be hidden. In the desert, they are waiting for a lot of dangers, and it is necessary to try to save their savings. The next day, the guys devote to preparation for the transition. They buy balaclavas and goggles for crossing the desert, and still decide to follow the advice of an experienced comrade and hide the money in the safest place, having previously rolled it into a tight tube. The car full of people drives out into the Sahara, accelerating on the sand dunes. From the shaking and high speed, one of the tourists falls off, but the drivers refuse to slow down. They remind them that the rules say that passengers should worry about their own safety and hold on tight. For the first time since the beginning of the trip, the teenagers become really scared. Looking at the receding figure of a man who was abandoned in the desert, they realize that the jokes are over and the terrible unknown awaits them. The car rushes through the desert without stopping for a whole day. The terrible heat of the day is replaced by the cold of the night, not allowing the migrants to rest at least a little. But at dawn the next day, the Jeep stops abruptly at a lonely palm tree, signaling that a new challenge awaits the passengers. The driver orders everyone to vacate the vehicle and continue on foot. The tourists are met by a silent Bedouin as an escort, and the migrants have to follow him for the next few kilometers. The heat is a harsh experience for all the migrants, especially those who have to carry their children. Even the sturdy youngsters are getting sick. Only a small supply of water provides some relief. Looking around, Seydu notices many bodies buried in the sand, and he recalls the words of the watchmaker from the market, whom he and Musa did not believe, thinking that the man was just trying to frighten them. The Bedouin, as well as the drivers of the last car, as if not alive, he tirelessly goes forward all the time, not giving the settlers a minute of rest. Because of this, after a day, the first victims appear. A woman from the caravan falls on the sand, begging for help. Unable to pass by the unfortunate woman, Seydu turns back and runs to the woman. He tries to help her up, but her swollen legs tell him that it is almost impossible. The traveler can no longer walk, and she will have to remain a prisoner in the sand forever. Musa hurries his brother along, nervously glancing back at the caravan, which is rapidly moving forward. He reminds Seydu that no one will wait for them, and they could die if he doesn't abandon the weak woman and take care of his own skin. Hardly holding back his tears, Seydu carefully laid the woman on the sand, and imagining that it could have been his mother in her place, the boy sobbingly left after Musa. The teenagers hurried after the Bedouin and the rest of the travelers. Either from stress or from the heat, Seydu also becomes unwell. The boy starts hallucinating, in which he holds the hand of a fallen woman and she flies with the others, laughing happily. Musa has to bring his brother to his senses, forcing him to drink water and return to reality. The second day of the journey on foot is no different from the previous ones, except that with the onset of darkness, the caravan notices the approach of police cars, and the travelers are surrounded by armed men. All without exception are laid face down on the sand and ordered not to move. The police then order everyone to hand over their money voluntarily, but even this is not enough for the attackers. Those who say they have no savings are ordered to line up for a deeper inspection. Those who refuse to hand over their possessions are forced to drink sour milk with laxatives, and a few minutes later, piles of feces appear in front of the crowd of migrants. Those who really have nothing are transferred to one group, and those in whose waist they find rolls with money, to another. Thus it turns out that Musa is taken away by the police, while Saidu is left standing with the others. At dawn, Saidu continues his journey through the desert, but without a guide. At some point, the guy notices that everyone starts to run, and noticing a big car, he hurries there, hoping that now they will be helped and soon they will be in the place. But the door closes behind the migrants, and it becomes clear that there will be no help. The fugitives are indeed brought to Libya, but they end up in a slave labor camp. The crowd is divided into groups based on nationality. Joining the rest of the Senegalese, Saidu lightens up fearfully around the sides, having no idea what awaits him next. To explain to the travelers why they are here, the bandits bring an interpreter who explains the conditions of detention. The captives must obey all orders and demands of the armed men if they want to keep their lives. Otherwise, no one can help them, and no one can find them here. The first requirement for the migrants is to call home. They must give the phone numbers of their families, who will have to pay $800 for the lives of their loved ones. What happens otherwise becomes clear almost immediately. The men are led into a room where those trying to protect their families are put to the test. The sight is horrible, as are the screams that spread throughout the prison. Many of the men surrender immediately, promising to hand over all their contacts so as not to fall victim to the cruel jailers and not to be subjected to the horrible ordeal. Saidu is just as afraid as the others, but he realizes that his mother doesn't have that kind of money, and he doesn't want to put her and his sisters at risk. Even the mountain of breathless bodies does not convince him to show weakness. Holding back tears, the boy refuses to give the phone number where his family can be found. Together with the rest of the stubborn men, Saidu is taken to a special interrogation room and spends the night in suspended animation after being beaten many times. After that, the prisoners are transferred to a cell, but from the blows and injuries, Saidu begins to think badly. It seems to him that the shaman from his village has appeared to him, and the old man promises to send his angel to Saidu's mother to convince her that her son is fine, and she has nothing to worry about. In his vision, the teenager goes on a journey with this angel, and he sees his sleeping mother. From the pain and horror of what he was going through, the guy starts screaming, not realizing that he is screaming not only in his dream, but also in real life. Next to the teenager is an elderly man who feels sorry for Saidu. He helps him to lie down more comfortably and presses the boy to himself, trying to at least somehow ease his pain. At dawn, the jailers enter the cell, and one of them announces the recruitment of men for certain professions. This time, he needs carpenters and builders. The old man who supported Saidu raises his hand and forces the teenager to do the same, not wanting to leave the guy in a cell where he only faces a terrible end. The plan of the kind builder works. He is bought along with his young assistant, and thus they manage to leave the terrible prison. The car again takes them across the desert into the unknown, but now there is at least a little hope that they can survive. The captives find themselves in the residence of a rich Libyan sheikh, located among the desert sands. The construction workers are entrusted with building a house and given a corner next to the camels where they can rest after a day's work. The workers are even provided with food, which was sorely lacking during the last days of their arduous journey. The old man teaches Saidu all the secrets of construction, and the boy does a great job. In the evenings, settled in their tiny shelter, the men manage to talk and tell each other about their families. The old man turns out to have a very large family, for the sake of which he also decided to escape from Africa. Saidu also tells the patron about himself and how he lost Musa during a police raid. The guy admits that he doesn't know if his brother is still alive, but he hopes that he can still find him someday. After a few days of work, the estate manager informs the builders that they have a chance to free themselves. Since the millionaire is pleased with their work, He commissions the men to build a fancy fountain, and if successful, he guarantees them not only their freedom, but also full payment for the road to Tripoli. Despite the fact that this may not be true, the old man and Seydu set about building the fountain. The men work almost without rest, stacking bricks and laying mosaics, at night wondering if the rich sheikh will keep his word or if it will all turn out to be a pipe dream. The day of commissioning comes, and lurking around the corner, the builders fearfully watch the reaction of the owner of the estate, who has come to see the fountain with his own eyes. Fortunately, both the sheikh and his wife come to love it, and it seems that no one is going to cheat them. A few days later, the construction workers find themselves in a large city where they have actually been paid for their journey by a Libyan sheikh. Seydu begins to question refugees like himself, hoping that at least one of them knows a Senegalese named Musa. But unfortunately, none of the guys have heard of such a guy, and all they can do is to tell the teenager where else he can look for his brother. Now it's time to say goodbye. The old man offers Seydu to stay with him and go to work together on a construction site. But the teenager admits that he has to find his relative and continue with him to Europe, where they can get rich. Seydu hugs his savior tightly, realizing that they will likely never meet again. Finding the Senegalese camp, the boy asks the elder about his brother, but no one there has heard of Musa either. Nevertheless, the old man offers the refugee his help. He offers him to return to his house for the night, promising not to charge him any money. Hearing that the guest is looking for a lost relative, the other villagers tell him about the Senegalese camps and explain how to get there. Wasting no time, Seydu goes there. The teenager works late into the night in construction sites and workshops where Senegalese people work, but there is no news of Musa. At night, he returns to the old man's house and the boy manages to have dinner and a break. But with the onset of morning, he leaves again, without giving up hope. To somehow survive, Seydu gets a job at a construction site, and on one of the working days, he is informed that a young Senegalese has appeared in the neighboring camp. The teenager does not hesitate to run there, and it turns out not in vain. On the concrete floor under a blanket, he finds Musa, seriously wounded in the leg. The cousins can't believe that they have finally met, but Musa can't leave with his brother. His injury is too serious. He tells Seydu that he was shot while escaping from the police, which means that a lot of time has passed, and it is unlikely that he will be able to do without a doctor's help. The once brave Musa asks his brother to return to Senegal. It seems to him that there is practically no chance to survive with such a wound, and the teenager would like to leave his life in his native home, next to his mother. But Seydu realizes that this is impossible. To go the way they have gone once again means to sign his own sentence. Seydu takes his brother to his camp and finds a doctor among the construction workers. After examining the guy's leg, the doctor insists that he must go to the hospital, but since everyone realizes that the migrants will not be treated, he agrees to help him personally. The doctor sends Seydu to the market, to his barber friend, and the latter secretly sells the teenager antibiotics and painkillers. From that day on, the boy begins to take care of Musa. He gives him bandages and washes away the dirt that has been left over from the time he crossed the desert. A few days later, a doctor returns to the camp to examine the patient, and after asking Seydu for a few words, he informs him that they can't do without a hospital. Musa is getting worse, and his wound is not healing. Through his acquaintances, the teenage construction worker finds the right people, those who can get them across the sea and deliver them to Europe. But there is a new problem. The money earned is not enough even for a seat for one passenger, let alone to transport two. Seydu's persuasions do not help. The businessman does not agree to carry the guys for free or even on credit. But after thinking about it, he offers another option. The young Senegalese will take the helm of a boat that will take him and his brother to Italy in just one day. Not thinking about the danger and the fact that there might be a catch, the teenager agrees, but on the condition that the carrier teaches him how to steer the boat. The boy happily tells Musa about it, who is very amused by this news. Knowing that his brother can't swim, he tries to imagine how he will manage the boat. But despite this, the boys are happy about the opportunity and anticipate how tomorrow they will go to the doctor and call their mothers. At night, the cousins get to the wharf, and it becomes obvious what the peculiarity of Seydu's job is. Besides his and his brothers, the boat is packed with several dozen people, among whom the guy sees many women and children. Besides, the boat itself turns out to be very small and old, and judging by its appearance, it will not be able to pass through the waves of the vast ocean. The training, which the carrier promised Seydu, also turns out to be of poor quality. The man shows the teenager a lever, a compass, and explains that when you meet high waves, in no case you should not try to go around them. The briefing ends here, but just in case, the businessman gives the captain a cell phone, promising that in case of anything, his team will come to the rescue. The next night, Seydu does not manage to sleep. Looking at people, the guy realizes that he cannot take on such responsibility and get behind the wheel. At dawn, the teenager returns to the city to inform his employer, but the businessman is not going to change his plans and return the money to someone. He orders the guards to take Seydu away and shouts to the guy in the wake that there will be no other option. At night, the boat goes out into the Mediterranean Sea, gathering 100 people on its small board. The teenager holds the helm responsibly, trying to follow all the instructions received during the short training. Seydu is very nervous, especially when he notices the waves getting bigger. But Musa, who is sitting next to him, tries to support his brother, assuring him that he can handle everything. At last, the lights appear on the horizon, and the boys happily approach the window of the captain's bridge to see Italy. But the smiles quickly fade from their faces. The closer the boat gets to the lights, the clearer it becomes that this is not the mainland, but some station in the middle of the sea desert. The boat slowly circles the station without encountering a single ship or any presence of life on its way. The next day, Seydu has to anchor the boat and run down below. There, right on deck, one of the female passengers has gone into labor. After giving the woman water, Seydu realizes that it's time to call for help, and he takes out his cell phone, but the number given is not the number of the carrier's crew, but the number of the emergency service. After listening to the guy, the dispatcher promises to pass the signal to the Coast Guard, but she warns the young captain that help will have to wait for a long time. A few hours later, Seydu calls the dispatcher again, but the news does not comfort the teenager. The Malta Coast Guard does not respond to the request for help, and the rescuers of Italy refuse to send the ship, as it is not their territorial waters. It turns out that no one will come to the aid of the refugees, despite what is happening. It becomes clear to Seydu that no one will save these people but him. Hanging up the phone, the guy goes back to the steering wheel and presses the gas. The next day brings another unpleasant surprise. It turns out that passengers are also traveling in the engine room, and because of the heat and lack of air, they all become ill. The captain has to hand over the helm to Musa to sort everything out and save people. Several men are pulled out of the sub, who have already started to pass out. Panic and crush begin on board, and Seydu's hands are downcast at the sight of it. The teenager demands that everyone calm down and stop pushing next to the pregnant woman. He urges the refugees to pray and promises that none of his charges will die. All the passengers will reach their destination alive. Another 24 hours pass, and by some miracle, the boat continues to sail, despite its deplorable condition. Seydu can hardly stay awake for several days, but suddenly he is energized by the appearance of the mainland. In the distance, he sees a dusky outline, which can only mean one thing: they have made it. The mood on the boat instantly changes. Seeing the shores of Sicily, the passengers start singing and waving to the border helicopter that appeared above their heads. Climbing the mast, Seydu also starts waving to it, trying to shout to the whole world that it was him who did it. He saved people and helped them get closer to a decent life. He, the very captain.